Hey there guys, so I want to welcome you to today's live stream. I am going to be doing this a little bit different than my normal ones because I am going to do it on my own personal profile. But again, I will share it to the group page. But the reason why I want to share this live stream sort of through my profile is to sort of go a little bit into detail about what my program is about and to sort of expand and to show anybody who has not seen any of my content or has not sort of looked into my content and what I have to offer and sort of how my workout program works. That is the reason why I'm going to share it here on my profile. But again, I will be posting it to the group for you guys who watch my live streams through my online fitness training group. It will be posted there. And this is likely going to be posted on YouTube as well. So I want to thank you guys who have not watched any of my live streams before. I usually do at least once a week on my group page. I can share the link to that when I finish the video. But really what I want to discuss today is sort of a little bit about my program. I'll not really went into detail as to how my program works and sort of the structure of my program and what everything is based on with my fitness program. So I want to dive into that today and show you guys what I have to offer. So basically, I guess to sort of introduce myself in a way. So I am a NASM certified personal trainer. I also have a specialization in virtual coaching. So basically, I'm certified through the National Academy of Sports Medicine. It's one of the largest fitness certification organizations around, and it's very well known. Um, and when I sort of searched and looked for, getting a fitness certification, I had always heard of NASM in the past, actually, before I'd even got into fitness. And I always knew that they were a pretty well-known organization. So I wanted to get the best of the best when I got certified. So that is why I chose to be a part of NASM, as my own certified, as being a certified personal trainer. So a lot of the training that I do is based on evidence-based practice. And when you base it off of evidence-based practice and science fact, it is going to deliver results. That is everything that my program is based on is all about evidence-based practice. So again, I am an NASM trainer, but I'm not, this isn't like a sponsored thing. This is what my training is all based upon. It's based upon this model. So as an NASM trainer, I base my programming on the OPT model, which is the optimum performance training model. So there's basically there's 5 different steps. I don't know why I said 3. There's 5 different steps that goes with the OPT model. And each of these steps, before I get into it, each step is sort of as a phase. So depending on where you're at in the program, you could go up or down these steps. It's not just a straight up, sort of ascension like with stairs. You can go up or down depending on what stage you are in a program. So there are 5 phases basically. You have a stabilization endurance phase, strength endurance phase, muscular development phase, maximal strength phase, and a power phase. So I want to discuss what this means exactly. So again, like I said, my programming is all based on this OPT model. So basically, one of the most important phases, and I mean it's very much emphasized in my programming a lot, is the stabilization endurance phase. And this is the main thing that is focused on, especially when you're getting started, you're a beginner. And even then, when you get into a more intermediate sort of level in training, you still will go back to this phase time and time again because it's the foundational phase of the program. So you have the with the stabilization endurance phase, it is all involved with mobility and flexibility, core and joint stabilization, postural alignment and control, as well as muscular and aerobic endurance. So basically, basically what the stabilization phase is, or stabilization endurance phase, is sort of the warm-up style phase, is the way I like to describe it. You're doing a lot of stretching, a lot of sort of low intensity type exercises with this phase, and it's just the phase where you sort of get started with the program. And it's just to master basic movement patterns and just sort of help you progress. The main thing to help you progress to higher phases in the program. So the next one we have is strength endurance. Basically, what strength endurance is core strength and joint stabilization. That's the main focus, as well as muscular endurance and prime mover strength. That's basically what this involves. This is a little bit higher intensity, not that much higher intensity, but it's a little bit more, of course, than the stabilization endurance phase. So you're going to have a decrease in rest periods. You're going to increase the volume of the exercises with reps and sets. Of course, you're increasing the load in the resistance training based exercises, and just increasing the overall complexity. So stabilization endurance is just a beginner starter foundation stage where you're doing low intensity exercise to start out. And then once you become more acquainted with stabilization endurance, you're going to move into strength endurance training. So to go beyond that, so once you sort of mastered the strength endurance training, which again I want to reiterate is core strength and joint stabilization focus, as well as muscular endurance and prime mover strength focus. So we move on to muscular development. So what does muscular development do beyond the strength, endurance, and stabilization phases? So basically, this focuses on core strength and muscular strength and hypertrophy. So with this phase, you're going to increase the volume of your exercises. You're going to increase the load, again, as it relates to strength endurance, and you're going to increase the complexity a little bit more. So it's a little bit more expanding on the strength endurance phase, to put it lightly. So again, you're just going to increase your volume of your exercise. You're increasing your load. You're increasing the complexity when you move into the muscular development phase, the muscular development phase. So this is likely, this is more of, I guess you would say, individuals who are wanting to gain more muscular strength and to focus on building a little bit more muscle mass, I guess you would say. So let's move on to maximal strength, and this is primarily focused more, again, it continues to focus on core strength, but this focuses more on maximal muscular strength with this phase. So you're going to increase the load of your resistance training exercises, and then you're going to increase the sets of those resistance training exercises. So that's basically what the primary focus of the maximal strength training phase. So again, this is just an expansion of the muscular development phase. This is, as you go on, depending on what your goals are, going through these phases sort of depends on what you want to accomplish with your goals. If you're wanting to lose weight or anything of that sort, you're likely not going to go as far as maximal strength, because whereas maximal strength focuses on people who really want to gain a lot of muscle mass and build on muscle hypertrophy and things of that nature. So that's the main focus of the maximal strength phase. All right, so we're going to continue on and talk about the power phase. So the power training phase focuses again on core strength, Maximal muscle strength. But the difference with this is it also focuses on rate of force production. So again, you're sort of expanding a little bit more on the maximal strength phase, but you're increasing your load resistance and then you're increasing your speed as well as increasing the sets of exercises. So with the power phase, this phase I would more classify as sort of endurance based exercises, sort of endurance training. It's more of like plyometric, speed, agility, quickness type exercises that are focused with the power phase. So, again, depending on your goals, whether you go through these, you won't go through these phases in a straight line. You likely go up and down the phases. Or if you're, like I said, mentioned before, if you're losing weight, you're probably not going to go as high as, maximal strength or muscular development. You're likely going to stay in more stabilization and strength based exercises. So, this is basically somewhat of the structure of what the exercises are focused on. So I want to move on beyond this. Again, this is sort of explain the basis of my programming and what is the sort of the background of what I base everything off of. So again, this goes into as it relates to the OPT model, everything's integrated. It's an integrated training model that I base everything off of. And when your program is built, it's going to be built basically on 7 different things. So when I program for an exercise, it's going to start out with a warm up, which when I have what I classify here as a warm up basically is this number 1 here, which is flexibility based exercises, and then you get to the end, and this is sort of the end part of the exercise, which is more resistance training, but you also technically have a cool down beyond this resistance training part. So when you're starting out, you're going to have likely flexibility warm-up based exercises to start out, and as you continue on, we're going to focus on your core, improving the posture and enhancing the performance of your exercises. Depending on what exercise or what sort of phase you're in, we're going to focus on your cardio, and cardio, of course, focuses on cardiovascular and respiratory health, balance, maintaining postural control, plyometrics, jumper reactive training. Depending on what program you're doing, this likely is not going to be for everybody. The same with SAQ training. SAQ is sort of similar to plyometric training, where you're stimulating muscles and neurological and connective tissue. So SAQ is sort of speed agility based training. So again, depending on what your sort of goal is going to determine sort of what you're going to what different exercises you're going to go through. So primarily with my clients, since it's more muscle mass based, it's more building muscle and things of that nature, it's going to be likely focused on, of course, flexibility, core, a little bit of cardio, maybe some balance training, and then your resistance training. And of course, the cool down would be flexibility training. So, as far as a blueprint for somebody who's wanting to, gain muscle mass, definitely flexibility, core, cardio, balance, and resistance. So, if there's something else that you're looking for, it just, it's going to depend. Likely with somebody who's wanting to do weight loss, that's going to change, whereas you're likely going to have, of course, more cardio and not really resistance training, if that makes sense. So this is basically just to show you the different categories of exercises that are integrated into the program. All right, so as far as my program is concerned, it's all commitment based. So I do base everything off of a contract model. So depending on what your particular goal is, and where you want to get started, it depends on sort of your commitment. What are you committed to doing? Whether it be 3 months of training, 6 months of training, or 12 months of training. So again, whatever contract you're doing, you've got 3 months of commitment, 6 months of commitment, and 12 months. So that's what, as far as when you're getting started and when you sign a contract, it's all based on one of these three sort of commitments under the contract. Alrighty, so I mentioned commitment. So whenever you're doing a program, especially when you're wanting to achieve a goal, this is the major blueprint that I follow and that I encourage you to follow, especially when you're starting a program, to base all of your goals upon. So when you create goals and, when you're wanting to, gain muscle mass or weight loss or anything of that sort, you want your goals to be based off of this blueprint in order to achieve them. You can make a goal, and if you make it too big, it's likely not going to be achieved. But when you're making your goal into the most detailed way possible, then you're likely going to achieve it. So that's why I have this here, and why I explain it all the time is that when you're creating your goals, you want them to be SMART, which is basically an acronym here. So you want your goal to be specific. Is your goal clearly defined? You want your goal to be measurable. Can your goal be tracked and measured? Is your goal challenging yet achievable, which is attainable? Is your goal realistic? Is your goal realistic and relevant to your life? 5. Is your goal timely? Is it set and tracked in a specific time frame? So this is your blueprint. When you commit to doing an exercise or any kind of training regimen, you want to base your goals off of being specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. Alrighty, so what I want to talk about next is sort of the assessment-based aspect of my program. So if you get signed on and you get involved with my program, the first thing that I focus on is your assessments. So, especially before that, of course, making sure you're physically ready for exercise and things of that nature. But once I know that you're ready, then we go into the assessments. Now, again, this is all based on a virtual online coaching model. So this is virtual assessments that I do for my clients. So there's 3 major assessments that I do as it relates to virtual training. There's likely more depending on your goals. So the first one is the Apley Scratch Test, which measures your upper extremities and any mobility limitations you may have. The next is the overhead squat assessment. It's reliable and functional measurement of your kinetic chain movement quality. And third is a single leg squat assessment, reliable and relatively easy assessment to measure stability, strength, balance, and motor control. So these are basically the sort of fundamental assessments that I do when starting out an online client. These need to be done, and this is where I base my programming off of, is what results I see in these assessments. So basically the way these assessments are formed in a virtual space is I would have you sort of, wherever you can set up like a camera or a phone, record each of these separate assessments. And I won't go into a lot of detail, but they're pretty much self-explanatory looking at it on screen. The only one that's not is the Apley Scratch Test, which you sort of use, is basically to use to sort of see sort of how far you can stretch, sort of any limitations you have as far as stretching. That's basically what the Apley Scratch Test is. But the overhead squat and the single leg squat can be pretty much self-explanatory. Um, but like I mentioned before, with with either a camera or a phone, you want to basically record these exercises, do a certain amount of reps. That way, and record it in different sort of angles. That way, I can see sort of what needs, when I'm looking at these recordings that you send, how do I need to program you? How, if you have limitations with any certain movement, or if you have any certain muscle limitations, then I'm able to sort of work around that, and program you correctly and safely. So that's the main important part when it comes to the assessments. And again, the assessments are the first thing that I start with. It's all about safety and making sure that I know what your limitations are as far as it relates to exercise. So when you're a part of my program, whatever commitment you pick, you will have an evaluation every 4 weeks. And basically what this is sort of for me to check your progress and to see where you are in the program. So every 4 weeks, check and see how you're progressing through the program. What are your successes? What are your challenges? How can we continue to improve your program and results? So we're basically just evaluating to see where you're at. If you're progressing, if anything needs to be changed, this is likely going to be done through a Zoom call, a video call, anything of that sort, whichever is able to be accessed. And this is just kind of like a one-on-one discussion, sort of, me evaluating your Trainerize, which I'll go into next, your Trainerize, what exercises you're completing, and any workouts that you're completing, and as well as your metrics, when you change your metrics, your body weight, measurements, anything of that sort. And that way I can look at your program and see, okay, what do we need to change next? Or what have you been improving on in this and that? So that's basically what this is. It's sort of just evaluating where you're at in the program. Alrighty, so Trainerize. Basically, Trainerize is what my whole programming is based off of when it relates to the virtual training aspect of it. So Trainerize is a really cool app that I use. It's how everything is tracked when you start a workout program with me, and it's how you're able to, message me, and as well as nutrition, sort of your nutrition based plans and things of that nature. So let me go through these and sort of discuss this. So with Trainerize, you have the ability to access your workout plan that I give to you. So you have a step-by-step and detailed explanation of your workouts through video and written instructions. You have 24/7 messaging, instant messaging through Trainerize to communicate with your trainer and fellow teammates in the program. You have progress tracking when it relates to Trainerize, which is track various metrics and habits related to your fitness and health progress. And you also will have access to Evolution Nutrition. You get access to exclusive service where you're offered meal plans by certified nutritionists. So this is all of what's basically sort of I guess, sort of simplified in a way. This is what all is in Trainerize. So Trainerize it's pretty much an app that you have where you'll be able to communicate with me, where you track your workouts, where you track your progress, where you can message me directly, and then you have access to your nutrition plans. It's all in one app. The cool thing too that I want to mention going to progress tracking is you can go into detail. I mean, you can track daily habits. You can pretty much, customize it to yourself. Yes, I will put workout plans in there, but we can also track habits, whether are you drinking enough water, are you taking enough steps throughout the day. There's so many different things that you can do with Trainerize. It's, once I get you in the program, you would be able to understand sort of what there is to do with it. But this is sort of a simplified example of what what Trainerize is. And again, since it's an app, it can also be accessed to the computer, but it's what my programming is all, where it's all placed at. And, once you start a program with me. So, Evolution Nutrition. So, Evolution Nutrition is a part of, it's sort of integrated into Trainerize in some form, I guess you'd say, but it is a separate program in itself. So, basically, what this is as a personal trainer, I'm not able to give really nutrition based advice, I guess you'd say, because it is sort of outside of my credentials as a personal trainer. But through the access of Evolution Nutrition, which again is integrated into Trainerize that I offer you, you get meal planning through registered nutritionists. You get nutrition monitoring. You have pre-made and labeled meal plans. And again, it's all integrated into Trainerize. So this is like a separate sort of application that I have that you have access to, where you can access meal plan based stuff, which is through registered nutritionists. And this is sort of, you create a separate profile in this program, and you're able to track sort of your meal planning based stuff. This is really cool. I'm really happy to have this. I think it's really cool sort of extra that you have access to when you start training with me. And it's a really cool application. I've used it somewhat. Again, I'm sort of getting started with it, but it's a really cool program to sort of get acclimated with, and just to see all the meal plans. There's a ton of meal plans. It's all, I mean, you can go into detail whether, lactose free, gluten free based stuff, low carb based meal plans. I mean, it's just so much different stuff when you go into the program. So I did want to sort of explain that with you. Really happy to have that, especially with Trainerize. It's just so much cool stuff that's in it. So I wanted to share that as well. So does the program work? It does. But as far as with the program, you do have to, it is all about putting in the work and the effort and sticking with the plan. I can attest to it myself. It took me a long time. Whenever I started sort of getting serious with, fitness and weightlifting, it was hard. I had to sort of plan things out. And I think that's mainly how I saw results, was because I planned it out. And because, okay, I knew what I needed to do. I wrote it down, and, I sort of set a timeline, and I set my goals in a certain way that I could achieve them. So, yes, it is possible, but you have to stay consistent with it. You have to be committed to it, and you have to know that results don't happen instantly, that it's a process. And you have to sort of stay in the right mindset and know that, okay, if I stick with this, then it is possible. And it definitely is, I mean, I can attest to that myself, because I've learned it myself, because I struggled for a long time, being skinny, and just not being, where I wanted to be. And now I can see that, it is possible, when you stay committed to it and you work towards it, it is possible. So that basically sums up my presentation for today. Again, I hope you guys found this valuable. I know it's somewhat different to the people who watch my normal group-based live streams, but I really wanted to put this in my profile to sort of show anybody else who's not really watched my live streams, sort of show what I have to offer as a personal trainer. I know you may have seen my videos that I post, but you've not really seen me discuss my program into detail. And that's what I really wanted to accomplish with this, is sort of just discuss this and show you what I have to offer. So thank you so much for taking the time to watch this. I can't really look at any comments or anything right here with the presentation in front of me. But if you guys have any questions, you can always feel free to, you can comment on this, of course, or you can send me a message as well through Facebook. As well as you can email me through my email here that I have on screen, brandonpart95@gmail. And then I have my phone number on here as well that you can message me or call me if needed. But again, thank you guys for letting me share my, what I have to offer as far as my training program. And I really appreciate the time. And I hope to talk to you guys soon. And I likely will have another live stream in the coming week. I usually, again, do live streams at least once a week, and it's usually in my group. But thank you guys for taking the time to watch this, and I will see you guys later.